I also really enjoyed the stories about making AOL accessible. I mean, you had like these different services that you would come up with before, but it took many years to finally come up with this idea of America Online and having the voice of, welcome, you've got mail and all of that. And it sounded like you had learned a lot from working at Procter and Gamble and Pizza Hut before in terms of understanding how to make something approachable to a consumer. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. No, I think they were both great experiences. I graduated from college in 1980, and at the time, I actually wanted to pursue the internet. I read a book while I was in college by Alvin Topher called The Third Way, the same name as my book. I was really mesmerized by his vision for the future, essentially outlining back then what we now think of as the internet. But when I graduated in 1980, there really weren't any internet companies to go to, and there wasn't much of a startup culture back then. So that's why I decided to work for some big companies for a while. And so I worked for a couple of years at Procter and Gamble in Cincinnati, and then for a year at Pizza Hut, which at the time was a division of Pepsi Co. I learned a lot at both companies, even though I was there a short period of time. One of the things I did learn at P&G was how they use market research to really understand consumer preferences, and how they also use things like sampling of products to get people to try the product. So if they're launching a new shampoo, for example, they'd have little packets of shampoo that they might bundle with newspapers or send you by mail. And that inspired us a few years later when we were trying to accelerate the growth of AOL to distribute free trial discs to make it easy for people to try the service. So it's I think that was a lesson I learned from P&G. And one of the lessons I learned from Pizza Hut was how do you keep things simple and focused on convenience? That they really were focused on trying to be a kind of a mainstream brand. I think they had something like 5,000 Pizza Huts at the time. Most of the chefs were 16, 17-year-old kids who didn't have a lot of experience, culinary skills. So how do you create things that could be distributed broadly and available broadly? So there are different lessons that, and one of the things we focused back then on is again the early '80s. Pizza was focused at the time on delivery. Of course, now most of the pizza places do have delivery, but back then it was sort of a novel concept. So the convenience and simplicity that Pizza focused on, the sampling, the marketing efforts that P&G focused on were helpful as I then moved onto my entrepreneurial journey as a co-founder of AOL and a few years later in 1985.
So this is a little bit of a tangent, but I'm very curious. You were director of new pizza development, correct?
Right.
And so were there examples of pizza ideas that you came up with that you had trouble getting the less trained employees to be able to actually execute?
Oh yeah, there was part of what I was doing was because we believed that the innovation wasn't just going to be at our test kitchen, which happened to be in Wichita, Kansas, but there were tens of thousands of independent pizza places all around the country, and some of them likely had some innovative products. So maybe rather than sit in Wichita, we should hit the road and learn from what's happening out there. So I spent a lot of time traveling around, and often would find something that in a particular city that was interesting. But then to figure out a way to replicate that in 5,000 places with untrained chefs, was definitely a challenge. And so most of the things that we thought were good ideas ended up not really fitting with the Pizza Hut model.